I think often as individuals, in fact, as individuals, we think one act can't make a difference, but it can. And she knew that. So
yeah, it's an absolutely perfect metaphor for what doing this work is like. And it can really feel like an uphill battle. So I totally understand how disheartening, this another uphill battle is in this area. But the beautiful thing about this community is that we show up for each other.
We're facing a crisis, but it's not a new one. Sometimes it's forgotten, sometimes it's ignored. Eating disorders are still the mental illness with the highest mortality rate. More than 1 million Australians are currently suffering. 5 people lose their lives every day to these illnesses, and that number is rising. Life-saving treatment is impossible to access for most of us. That was all due to change with the opening of Wandinnerida, our first residential facility, until it was recently announced that the doors could not open. Sounds hopeless, right? Not quite. There's still hope. There's always hope. It's us. It's you. No matter where you are in the world, if you're watching this, you're in this fight with us. And today, we're going to do whatever it takes to open the doors and save lives.
Hi guys, back to sort of the usual setup. Just took you on a bit of a tour of Australia visually, but we're sort of back to what we're used to. Today is obviously a bit of a different video. It's a very important one. It's important to me. I know it's important to Butterfly, and I have no doubt it will be important to everyone in this amazing recovery community of ours. Because sometimes I know in our own recoveries, or in supporting others, or in treating others, if you're someone who's in the field, directly being able to impact and save lives can feel impossible at times. And today we can tangibly, immediately contribute towards making an enormous difference and, in the long term, saving lives. Wandinnerida is a facility which is based on an incredibly successful treatment model in a country where there are not a lot of treatment options, where we have more than 1 million people suffering and not even close to enough treatment options and opportunities for those people. I am asking today for whatever you can contribute. If you can sign the petition that is in the description box below, if you can donate anything. I know it's been a tough 12 months. I would never ask you to give what you cannot give, but if you can, please donate. This is one of the biggest areas where we can make a difference. And I'm not just here to, talk the talk. I'll be donating $1,000 of my own money to the opening of Wandinnerida. That's what I can donate, and it's what I am absolutely willing to donate, because I know from all sides of this recovery thing that this is going to save so many people. It'll save families. It will have a ripple effect that is going to save lives on and on and on and on into the future. And if you're sitting and wondering why, if you're in the US or the UK, this is relevant to you, why maybe should I contribute to something that is so needed in Australia? Because we are a community who show up for each other no matter what. And this can be a demonstration of what is possible elsewhere, that with enough support from anyone and everyone, it's going to send messages that far exceed the Australian borders. If we can show that we are a community who stand behind each other and advocate for each other, as we've been doing here for a long time, I believe it will have a ripple effect that goes so far beyond what we're trying to achieve and the people we're trying to save here. So in this video, you'll be seeing my interview with the wonderful Kevin Barrow, Butterfly's CEO, who I have such enormous respect for, who is such a dedicated, invested leader at Butterfly. And you will see that come through very quickly in this video. You've probably seen it at the beginning of this video. Know that whatever support you can give to Butterfly, to Wandin Nerida, is going to support people like Kevin and the whole team at Butterfly and at Wandin Nerida, who are so passionate and care about each and every single person who will be saved by this facility. I will leave all those links below. I will be signing my name. I'll be donating $1,000. I will be eternally grateful for whatever it is that you can do. Enjoy my chat with Kevin. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and whatever you can do, I will be so grateful.
So Kevin, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down and chat with us today to give a little bit more insight into the current status of Wandin Nerida. Probably the best place to jump off is to ask, why is Wandin Nerida such an important addition to the Australian eating disorder landscape? What do people need to know about why we need the doors to open?
Yeah, well, thanks, Mia, for having me along. I think if you're in Australia and you have an acute exacerbation of an eating disorder and you end up in a public hospital, the focus, understandably, very much is on your physical well-being. So it may be focused around refeeding, which is necessary at that time because you may be very, very unwell. The challenge is that often they don't have the capacity to then treat the underlying psychological illness. And then we get a revolving door where those individuals go back into the community, particularly if they don't have the financial means to potentially attend a private hospital and the like. And they end up back in hospital and back in hospital again. And what we know with eating disorders is if left untreated, it is much, much harder to deal with in the future. Mm-hmm. And so we think Wandin Nerida fills an important gap in the healthcare system. The roles that public hospitals play are very, very important, and it's no disrespect to the public hospitals. But Wandin Nerida is about delivering care over a longer period of time, often several months, very tailored care, targeted very much at that individual. And it's about teaching the skills for recovery. So when that individual gets back out in the community, they can stay in the community and hopefully don't end up back in hospital.
Yeah, and we know from a research standpoint that if we intervene early enough and effectively enough, then people heal and they don't, have these rates of relapse and going back into treatment. So from an individual perspective and even from a government perspective, financially, it seems to make more sense to kind of put the funding into this. The accumulated cost there is enormous.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And these sorts of facilities started with the work of Carolyn Costin in the United States. And I think they grew from one facility, and I think there are now 17 facilities that, she initially started and around 70 across America. I think that wouldn't have occurred if they weren't playing an important part in the system of care. Mm-hmm. I think it is very, very important to know that recovery from an eating disorder is possible, mm-hmm. But it's about early identification and using evidence-based care. And you mentioned the costs, and one of the great things about Wandin Nerida is the federal government has supported us to do both a clinical and an economic evaluation of the facility. So things I've talked to you about in terms of preventing readmission to hospital, we will be measuring. So individually, it's very, very important, but also important to understand the evidence, because it's our goal that this level of care is made available to as many Australians as possible. And it's only through generating that evidence we'll be able to make that a reality.
Absolutely. So why is the opening of Wandin Nerida now under threat? What's developed recently that has made that so much more difficult?
When we first had the concept of Wandin Nerida, it was about having a facility that would be able to take people both with the means to pay for that level of care, as well as those who didn't have the financial capacity. And so as part of opening our doors, we needed to raise significant funds philanthropically to enable that to occur. Sadly, last year was not a great year for many, many people. It started with the horrors of the bushfires that not only damaged individuals and communities, but also wildlife and so on. And then we got hit with COVID-19, and we're still not clear of that unfortunate occurrence. That has made fundraising very, very difficult for many charities across Australia, and Butterfly has been no exception. So we do have a bit of a gap in terms of opening our doors, and that's why we're going through a fundraising campaign and also engaging with the Queensland Government to see if there's any support they could give us to get our doors open.
People getting engaged and really showing their support is going to be essential. And if, as a second part to that, if people can open their wallets and connect to this issue, then both of those things are so not just welcome, but really essential for this process. So on that topic, what can the public and people watching this video, what can they do to help and sort of support Butterfly in this endeavour?
So look, if you do have the financial means, then obviously we are trying to raise funds, and I'll be very, very open about that. The other thing is to talk to your local member of parliament, particularly at a state level. Our facility is based in Queensland, but we aim to take people from all across Australia because we'll be the only sort of facility like this in Australia when we get our doors open. We already have over 230 people on expression of interest lists across all of Australia. And we are working with the Queensland Government. I'm very hopeful that they might provide us some degree of funding. So both conversations with your local politicians as well as obviously individual donations. And every donation does make a great difference.
Absolutely. And I think that, very often when we talk about eating disorders, we talk about how obviously damaging and how terrible they are, not just for the individual, but for the family and carers, etc. But there is so much hope in recovery. There's a really common thread with people who recover, which is that they pass it on, they pay it forward. They're then so invested in helping others and helping others achieve recovery. So this is an investment not just in those individuals and saving their lives. There is a true knock-on effect here. These people become very passionate. If they're fortunate enough to recover, to make sure that gets passed on to other people, whether it's through, advocacy or getting into the field. So there's a much bigger investment you're making if you choose to donate to the campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And the point you make is very, very valid. In fact, in Wandonnerita, we'll be utilising people with lived experience because that's very, very critical to the journey. Wandonnerita is about creating a home-like and caring environment for those individuals to teach the skills for recovery. And being able to see people who have gone through the journey and recovered is absolutely critical to their journey and ultimately their recovery.
Absolutely. So why should people help? If someone was watching this video and they needed one takeaway when they click onto it, why should people, be plugged into this issue? Why should they support?
Yeah, so, the way I look at this, I might give you a story that someone told me once, and it's, you might have heard it before, but it's about a young lady on a beach, and she's running around on the beach, picking up starfish and throwing them back into the water. An elderly man is also on the beach, and he walks up to the young woman and says, well, young lady, what are you doing? And she said, well, these starfish are stranded, the sun's out, they're going to die, I'm throwing them back in, otherwise they'll die. And he looked down the beach and he said, but young lady, there are thousands of starfish on the beach and you can't possibly save them all. And he responded with the fact that she bent down, picked up a starfish, threw it back into the ocean and said, I saved that one. And if we save one life, then it's a journey worth having. And I think often as individuals, we think one act can't make a difference, but it can. And she knew that. So
yeah, it's an absolutely perfect metaphor for what doing this work is like. And it can really feel like an uphill battle. So I totally understand how disheartening, this another uphill battle is in this area. But the beautiful thing about this community is that we show up for each other. And I really believe that we're going to show up for each other now because the more of us on the beach, the more that we can get back in the water, the more that we can save. So I truly believe that we're going to get there. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one individual at a time, that can multiply. And so the facility might be able to look after 60 people in a year. That's 60 lives we might change, and their families and their friends. But then if we develop the evidence that the model of care works here in Australia, then there's more and more people, and governments get behind and support that. And often I think, the world is such a big and challenging place that we feel that one life doesn't matter and one act doesn't matter, but one becomes another and becomes another, and has a real groundswell. So, we're really excited to want to open the facility. We think it's going to make a genuine difference. It's not the universal panacea, it's not the solution to everybody's needs, but there is a real gap, and we're trying to meet that gap, and that's what we're about. And thanks very much for hearing from us today.
Of course. And yeah, you see it. Every time I get to meet people who've recovered and their families, it's such a ripple effect. So yeah, we're not just saving one, we're saving families, we're saving communities, and it's a real investment in some pretty incredible people who will go out and save the lives of others. So thank you so much, Kevin. I so appreciate your time today. And yeah, just happy to be fighting alongside you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Kevin.